I now have the pleasure of introducing the second panel of today, and that's going to be Brando Benedict, who is with NASDAQ. He is a fixed income product manager, and he is going to be discussing and moderating the panel with the military spouse talent pool.
Good morning. Thank you, Carl. When I was asked to moderate this panel, it brought back memories of what I saw families go through when I was a young Marine. Military families on average move every 2 to 3 years. Spouses often giving up holding careers in order to move with the active duty spouse and take care of families. Women and some men who trained as human resource specialists or medical professionals, accepting low-paying jobs on base just to work somewhere and have some additional income. And if they get an overseas post, you may not have the option to work at all. More recently, many have chosen to open small virtual businesses online, selling products like Pampered Chef, LuLaRoe, 21 bags, and home items like cosmetics. And in the time of COVID, many spouses had to stop these activities in order to homeschool their children. The families also serve with the service member, and we're here to discuss military spouses and how we can help them in the transition once the service member leaves the service or separates. For those in attendance, just keep sending questions. We'll try to get to them at the end of the session. And before we dive into the discussion, I ask the panelists to kind of briefly introduce themselves. And we'll start with you, Charles.
Morning, everybody. Thank you, Brando. Thank you for the opportunity. My name's Chuck Bunch. I had the privilege of serving in the United States Air Force for 20 years. I currently work with USA Military Affairs, military family advocacy in particular. I have the privilege of engaging in initiatives that are helpful to veteran and military spouse employment, particularly finding meaningful careers. And we're always excited at USA to support our military community, and in that aspect, just being on the forefront of initiatives that are going to empower and educate our military community, and as they integrate successfully reintegrate back successfully in their communities.
Great. Charles.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Christopher.
Well, hopefully everybody can hear me. I'm Christopher Plamp. I also had the privilege of serving the Air Force, did 26 years as an A-10 pilot, got out, worked for Hire Heroes USO as the CEO, and then now I'm the Senior Vice President for Operations, Programs, and Entertainment at the USO, which does involve our transition program and including our spouse services, both in the family side and then in the employment side. And glad to be here, and I'm putting my information in the chat.
Perfect. Lucian.
Good morning. My name is Lucy Piper. I am the Military Spouse Program Coordinator at ACP, which is a national nonprofit that helps with mentoring for our transitioning service members, post 9/11 veterans, active duty military spouses. And so I myself am now a veteran spouse. My husband served in the Marine Corps. We were married before he joined, so I had the experience that we're going to be talking about today. 3 significant career shifts during his service due to PCSing, multiple kind of degrees. I went back to school multiple times to earn different degrees. I ended up getting my MSW and focus on veteran and military families in the scope of social work, which brought me to ACP. And so this is something that is both near and dear to my heart and also kind of part of my history and what brought me into this. So I'm really excited to be here and share from my own perspective, but also helping other military spouses with their own careers and how to overcome some of these major obstacles that unfortunately come with the military lifestyle.
Great. Jerry.
Good morning. My name is Jerry Borgia. I am actually in San Diego, California. My father's retired Navy, so this is where I grew up. This is where I went to school. After I graduated, I joined the Army instead, served 9 years
wonder if we lost Jerry for a minute there.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, apologize for that. So my name is Jerry Borgia. I'm in San Diego, California. My father's retired Navy, so this is where I grew up. This is where I went to school. And after I graduated, I joined the Army instead. I served 9 years active duty as a military police officer. But I was also a detail recruiter. That's just a polite way of me saying that I didn't volunteer for recruiting command. I was ordered. And I have to say this, that if it wasn't for the Army ordering me to become a recruiter, I wouldn't have gotten to corporate HR, worked for some major companies such as Cisco, Qualcomm, and now Oracle. At Oracle, I am the Senior Diversity and Inclusion Consultant. My niche is veterans, military spouses, and internship programs, which I run, as well as the mentorship programs. And happy to be here. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, I think one of the key questions as we were preparing for this is, in the time of COVID, how has your organization's missions evolved to support, I guess, military spouses and that particular talent pool? And Charles, I'll let you start with USAA.
Thank you, Brando. One of the things that I'm very proud of our organization is, most of us have been challenged in this new environment. When all this hit, we were probably, I would say one of the organizations that rapidly withdrew or actually converted our employees to work from home. Most of us don't traditionally work from home. We had a small population that did that. So now, a majority of our employees are work from home until we feel it's right to come back into to our sites. What I would say is we rapidly adjusted to that, and I would say also that many of our military spouses that are within our company, they were work from home employees. But the beautiful thing about that experience that they had, we were able to get some of our military spouses to get engaged and get involved and help the rest of the workforce within USAA, because it's different. You're battling these challenges, and sometimes you need to increase your resiliency. And our military spouses were able to deliver presentations across the enterprise and help share some best practices that helped, enable our employees to continue to thrive. And that's where I'd say we had made that adjustment. Secondly, we're heavily involved in the Hiring Our Heroes Military Spouse Corporate Fellowship. And when this initially started, there was questions, do we continue because we're going to a virtual environment? But as an organization, particularly the home office in San Antonio where I'm located, we chose to continue, and we found it to be successful. And those are the two outcomes I would say I'm most proud of on this shift to a virtual environment. So our military spouse engagement showing the rest of the enterprise, some best practices and allow them to be successful in the new environment. And then of course, continuing on with our spouse fellowships with Hiring Our Heroes. Hope that answers the question, all right.
That's great. Christopher, with the USO, how has your mission evolved?
Well, the USO overall, I'll talk really quick, and then I'll talk specifically on our support for spouses. The USO traditionally, our mission has been through the centers that we have in over 250 locations around the world, most of them on military bases. As the military bases started to restrict access to them, period, even for people that are assigned or working on a military base. And obviously, as COVID changed the nature of how we do business, our ability to operate and integrate face-to-face, which has been our major way to provide services, overnight went to basically zero. We shut down about 85% of our centers, had to close to our normal traffic, and so it really presented a major challenge to us. We support spouses in two different ways, and the first that I'll talk about is through our transition program. And obviously we had to make a significant change. We went through a rapid retraining of our scouts, of our transition specialists out there who were helping the spouses to say, okay, how can we help more virtually as opposed to in person, which is what we had been doing. That went exceptionally well with the individuals really pivoting very quickly. And then the other is that we saw that based upon the fact this is a worldwide pandemic, we could not focus down on any particular area. We tended to go to the major bases with our in-person transition program to try to provide the maximum where we could in each of those locations. Well, this being a worldwide issue and some of the hardest hit places being overseas, we knew that we really had to take our recruitment, specifically for the military spouses, outside of what we had normally done and outreach to make sure that they also were being provided help. Recent surveys have said that anywhere between 40 and 50% of military families during the pandemic have taken a financial hit. A lot of that is from the military spouses either losing work or having a reduction in their pay from work and not being able to do it in person. So we viewed this as an absolutely critical thing that the USO needed to pitch in on. And as such, we started to actually expand our program during COVID. And we've actually expanded our capability to help 4,000 more per year as based upon just doing internal changes to our programmatics, because we know that this is a critical time with the economy as rocky it is and the change. And the other one is that military spouses are being hit not only with the standard challenges of military spouses, and now we know this employment drop, but they're dealing with the same changes in families that is happening around the world with children that are not going to school in person, which then gives them a lot of stress in their home life, talking about unknown certainty on when permanent change of station might happen because they may have to move, 14-day quarantines every time that they move. And there's some countries still in Europe that even if you just move between two countries, you have to do a 14-day quarantine. And so not only in our transition program, but our support for military families and spouses became even more critical during this time. So we looked at it kind of more holistically and started to get our transition program working with our family support program, because we knew that only through working those two programs together would we truly provide the services that the military spouses need during this pandemic. So that's in general how the USO is kind of pivoted to support the military spouses, both in the family care portion and the transition portion, which I see as a linked effort on our part to move forward.
That's great. Lucy, ACP, I know I actually am a mentor with ACP, and it's a great organization, but how has your organization evolved during these times?
Sure. So I think it'll be helpful to give you just a little bit of background about ACP and kind of how we facilitate mentorships and what that looks like and how that's kind of changed. So we are a national nonprofit that's been around since 2008. And so over the course of the last 12 or so years, we've had 18,000 veterans become alumni in our program. That was really the focus of the program for a very long time, was our transitioning service members and post 9/11 veterans. And so originally premised on this idea that we were connecting transitioning service member or veteran with a mentor for a fully customizable year-long one-on-one mentorship where they could focus on whatever it was that they needed at the time. So that's going to be, talking about education and, opportunities within a specific field, resume, networking, everything and anything in between. And so a little under 2 years ago, ACP added this military spouse program. And it was really kind of born out of the idea that we could do more. We became experts at facilitating these mentorships. We were seeing, the rates of, veteran employment, and we're not a jobs placement program, we're a mentoring program, but those who went through the program were finding more fulfilling, meaningful jobs. There was less turnover rate after they came out of the military into those jobs. And so we were seeing that this program was really working and wanted to leverage that into something that could help our military spouses, because we know, and I know personally, our spouses are generally very well educated. They've got the skills. They want to be employed. They want to be part of the community, but they face a lot of stigma and they face a lot of obstacles, and that makes it very hard for them to maintain a career. So we started kind of making shifts to the program to make sure that we were addressing their needs. How do you talk about maybe leveraging volunteerism? Because that's a big thing that we tend to do as military spouses, is plug into a volunteer network, because it is harder to find a paid job. How do you talk about gaps in your resume? When you're being interviewed, do you disclose that you're a military spouse, or do you kind of find a workaround where you're not lying, but you're also not maybe telling the whole truth? There are lots of things that are very unique to the military spouse population. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to connect them to experts in the field that they want to go in. So everything and anything, you know, some of the ones that you mentioned, small business is a big one in the military spouse community, especially now during COVID. You know, helping professions and healthcare and education, but also all of the other ones that our veterans want to plug into, logistics and operations and tech and all of these things. So we brought in mentors from lots of different areas so that they can connect with a mentor. They can ask these really unique, specific questions with somebody who's a resident expert. And that includes work-life balance. And I think that that's what we're seeing the most. So since we're a national nonprofit, and our mentors and our participants and proteges in the program have always been all across the globe, really. They connect virtually, and that didn't change. You know, we've always done that, where they connect either via phone or video conferencing tool. The difference for us is that we are all working remotely since we're situated here in New York City. We've been out of the office since March, but we've actually seen growth in the program so much so that we had to bring on new operations associates to help facilitate mentorships, and also make sure that we're supporting our spouses. So we added things like roundtables where our military spouse participants can come together in a platform like this to discuss things that are specific to them, you know, childcare issues, and do they put things on hold, and kind of just find a place for support. We started doing a lot more, obviously, virtual events, you know, and we do monthly webinars that are specifically kind of aimed at our female veterans and also our military spouses, because they tend to be mostly female in terms of the population. So really kind of just those wraparound services, and making sure that they're getting what they need to be successful. This is a very difficult time. I have 3 school-age children at home, and here in New York City, we still don't have full-time school. So it is very difficult to balance, and sometimes, you know, those military spouses need a sounding board. Sometimes they need a cheerleader. Sometimes they just need somebody to overlook a resume. But because the program is so customizable, they get what they need each and every time, because they set the agenda for each meeting. So that was a long way of saying not much has changed, other than we are trying to address the needs that they're facing. And it's ever evolving as we continue to kind of go further and further out from March, when I think a lot of us started to really feel the effects of COVID.
That is very insightful, and we'll dig into that a little bit more. But Jerry, how are things at Oracle?
Great. Things are really good. And again, thanks for having me here. So again, you know, at Oracle, what I want to share with you is that we're relatively new in the military spouse space. Oracle's had veteran programs for quite some time. I've been at Oracle for about 5 years. But when I attended the Employing U.S. Vets Conference in April 2019, I was really inspired by the military spouse panel. And so I went back to Oracle and says, we need to do something. And in the past year, what we've done is we've accepted civilian military spouses into our Oracle Veteran Internship Program. We had our first 2 this past spring. One of the 2 is now a permanent full-time employee working remotely. And that would be regardless of, remotely means working from home, and that would be regardless of the pandemic. That's just the way Oracle operates. And then we currently have 3 military spouse interns in our fall season, which is going on right now. So as part of our internship, we've allowed military spouse employees to mentor our military spouse interns, as well as our military spouse new hires to Oracle. And that's just an extension of our Veteran Guide-On program. That's just the name of our mentorship, Veteran Guide-On program, where we have veterans to veterans, but as much as we can, military spouses mentoring military spouses. And then now, as a result of some of our successes,
our military spouses are stepping up into board level positions, our community leader positions. And so they're being highlighted and they're leading by examples, which motivates other military spouses to want to engage with the rest of our ERG. So, you know, in a span of a very short year, we've had quite a few successes. Back to the virtual environment is Oracle is already ahead of the curve when it came to remote or flex positions. So a number of our employees were already working from home, and some positions, including my internships, were designed to be an on-site position. But when we went to 100% lockdown for the most part, everyone had to work from home. And what we've proven is there are more opportunities for these so-called must work at campus locations to be able to work from home. And our internship right now is 100% virtual position that we've proven that it's successful, but it also aligns with Oracle's model already that a number of our positions were automatically designed as work from home opportunities. So that's kind of where we're at regarding our virtual reality.
Oh, that's great. It's a lot of things going on there, and it seems like, you know, I hope that everything goes successfully for you there.
Thank you.
Lucy, with regards to your personal experience and the things you're doing, specifically for spouses that have advanced degrees and had that inconsistent work experience to work in, let's say, their field that they had their advanced degree, what resources and you know, from your own personal story, if you can share, what can you share about your experience?
You know, resources is hard just because it's going to be different for every field and kind of what you want to do. I know for myself, when I transitioned into social work, I found my own mentor who had worked in the field for a lot longer than I had. And we worked to really kind of reformat my resume. I was very used to a very traditional, and it really didn't read very well when I started applying for jobs in a new field. And so she really worked with me to kind of create this hybrid resume that was reflective of, you know, my education, which was going to be a big piece of it coming into a new field, but also leveraging, again, my volunteerism. I spent 10 years in family readiness as an advisor and assistant. And how could I relate those skills and what I did there into the social work field, and then bringing in previous management experience from other roles and careers past to make sure that I was showing, you know, employers that I was a really great candidate. And that's really, I think, what the most important thing for military spouses are, you know, creating a really great cover letter where you're addressing that right up front. Don't be scared to put yourself out there, be confident and comfortable. And so, you know, really do your research on what kind of resume is going to be best for you. You know, do you want to disclose? Do you want to talk about being a military spouse, or do you want to kind of reframe that in a way that works for you? Have that all planned ahead of time so that you know exactly what you want to say. And again, that mentorship piece is just something I know I'm going to say that probably 1,000 times today, but finding somebody who understands where you want to go. You know, there's that old adage, and I know it follows the veteran community around, you don't know what you don't know, but it's 100% true. And so connecting with somebody who does know what you don't know is going to make that big, big difference for you. And that applies to the military spouse community just as it does the veteran community. So finding somebody who can help you really be your best self on paper and in that interview is going to be great. And you know, it's hard. Military spouses are, you know, they typically have higher degrees than their civilian counterparts, probably because they have more time to focus on their studies in a lot of ways, because they have to fill in a lot of gaps. And sometimes employment is not where you fill in one of those gaps. But making it work for you, you know, showing that you're the best candidate, there's really not a lot that you can do other than be yourself, be positive, and don't try to apologize for the lifestyle that you lead. Be proud of it and make it work to your advantage.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I am on the steering committee for our veterans employee resource group at NASDAQ, and it is one of those things where finding allies and finding mentors, and it's one of the places where when we identify a veteran or a veteran, says I am a veteran, it is one of the support pillars that we can offer them as they transition into the workspace. But I'd like to open up that question. I don't know if any of the other panelists, specifically around spouses with advanced degrees, and if they've been identified, at least with your organizations.
Chuck, do you want to go ahead?
Thanks, Christopher. If I may, Brando, one of the things I have another fortune of being a part of or overseeing is our employment resource group, VetNet at USAA. And part of VetNet, we have a VetNet spouse group that the beautiful thing about that group is we have very successful military spouses that are attached to VetNet spouse. And so it gives them an opportunity to do lunch and learns and professional development type sessions to help grow our military spouses. And as Lucy maybe can attest to, and by the way, ACP, we heavily support and big believer of mentorship and giving our military spouses an opportunity to give back in that capacity. But getting back to VetNet spouse, it gives our spouses an opportunity to link up with other successful USA employees, executive leaders, and help them see the confidence like, yes, your skills may be diverse, but this is the journey that I took, and this is how I was able to accomplish or arrive where I'm at. And so to me, that source of inspiration is invaluable at our enterprise. And just love seeing the great sessions they roll out, the activity that, that they involve the rest of the enterprise, because we also have diversity business groups as well. And not only are they involved in VetNet spouse, but they may be involved in other diversity business groups. So I would say I'm a big believer of the ERG, as you mentioned, Brando, and VetNet spouse is a big driver for our military spouses within the enterprise.
So I would throw out, and I think that that's absolutely important. And by the way, I wanted to also do a shout out to Lucy and ACP, because I've been partners with them for years, and phenomenal organization and incredible results. But I would also say, in terms of, there's mentorship and then there's also networking. And I think military spouses and also veterans need to realize that they have an incredible built-in network. And the fact that you can reach out now through LinkedIn platforms, through company platforms, through spouses group, or like what the USO is focused on, as we know through surveys, that spouses want to be connected to other spouses to be able to discuss. Well, when you do that, you start to create this where, hey, spouses have gone before you and found those jobs in, let's say you're an electrical engineer or something, with a high professional degree. Well, it's utilizing those connections to find either something in that local area that you haven't been to before, or a remote opportunity, especially these days, as more and more remote opportunities are opening. I think that networking portion of it is a way to find where you can find that job that would be so hard to do when you're coming into a new city or sometimes a new country. And so I always highly recommend them. We've been running programs now virtually, which has actually expanded the networking opportunity that we provide for spouses from their local environment. And at one point we had military spouses with 3 different continents, all talking to each other about the challenge that they were facing in terms of finding jobs, overseas. So along with getting that key mentor through organizations like ACP, I also recommend reaching out and making sure you form into any spouses group that are in any of the military bases, and then also the ones provided by other nonprofits like the USO does.
Yeah. And Brando, what I like to add about Oracle is, if you know Oracle, you'll know that Oracle is a big technology company. But what a lot of people fail to realize is Oracle is a big, huge sales organization. We do a lot of enterprise sales. So one, if you have the background, or you have the aptitude for advanced degrees, we have opportunities. If you're very sales minded, if you're business minded, we have entry-level opportunities, which we will train you the Oracle way to become a business development consultant, to be a solutions engineer consultant, right? So the business side or the sales side, Oracle welcomes you. The other thing about a big company like Oracle is we have HR, we have finance and accounting, we have shipping and receiving, right? And so there are a number of opportunities that go beyond the technology side or the sales side, because much like a military installation, you need the support team to make that installation or to make that unit work, right? And that's something that you get from a large corporation that is like Oracle. And there are many Oracle-like companies out there for you to consider. So the thing I would caution you is that, you have to have the background or the fundamentals to be considered. And as Lucy had mentioned earlier, when it comes to presenting yourself, one thing that I will add is you have to be likable, right? Because this is about relationships. You could have the skills, you could have the degrees, but if you don't come across as likable during the interview process, who's going to want to work with you, right? So a lot of times attitude goes a long way in the recruitment process.
Great, Jerry. And for those in the audience, please post your questions into the chat. We have one from the chat, and it was, remote working has always been an important option for companies to provide military spouses. Who often have to move when their spouses move, PCS. COVID-19 has created a remote working revolution. What impact might this have on military spouses?
But I mean, I can go ahead, but I think it's a tremendous impact. I think there's the possibility of this revolutionizing military spouse unemployment because it sits at 4 to 7 times the national average for the same level of education and experience. And we've got to change this around. And if companies are opening up more and more remote opportunities, which we're seeing on a daily basis, and we're seeing whole companies go remote. I mean, even the USO, who employs about 700, we went a whole slew of our people remote. And the more opportunities there are like that, then I think the more opportunities of military spouses can overcome one of the couple big hurdles they have. And one of the big, and it was brought up in the comments, and I appreciate that, was the portability of their job. Because the issue is they have to find a job everywhere they go. And we're already even seeing this inside of our company, and I'm sure Jerry and Chuck have seen the same thing, where it's now all of a sudden you're keeping military spouses. And if a company does that a couple times, what you gain is all of a sudden the company goes, I'm maintaining some of my best workforce, and that can be really critical for them. And as they see that positive business outcome from that, I think it's just only going to accelerate. So I'm very positive on the fact that more remote more jobs are going remote.
Great.
I absolutely, sorry. I was just going to say, I definitely agree, Christopher. I think that one of the things for me that was one of the most difficult is when we moved to very remote locations, there aren't the job opportunities, unfortunately. And so a lot of spouses like myself will take very entry-level jobs or jobs that really don't meet our background and our education. And that almost makes it harder when you move back to, say, San Diego, where there are a lot more jobs, because now you have to explain why you took a pay cut or a position, a lower position. So if you can take your job with you, not only does it make it that you don't have to search for a new job, but you now can grow an actual career. It no longer becomes job to job to job. It becomes a long-standing career that you can keep and take with you and grow. And so I'm very hopeful that this will change the scope of remote work so that our spouses can really have a fulfilling, meaningful, long-term career in the future.
That's great. One of the questions that came up is, where are the best places to find military spouse talent?
Well, I mean, I can jump on there. There are a number of organizations and job boards that are actually promoting both military spouse or companies that are trying to hire military spouses, And also where military spouses can go on and look for those exact ones. One was mentioned in the chat. I don't want to call it any in particular other than one that we started the initiative when I worked back at Hire Heroes USA, where we had a specific portion that was dedicated to the military spouses that was emphasizing those remote job opportunities, and companies that had come to us and said specifically, we're looking to hire military spouses. But what I've seen is a great move towards almost all of the veterans boards now also having and emphasizing military spouses as part of that needed to solve the whole problem. Because it's the military community, the military family. It's not just the veteran or the transitioning service member. And I think more and more job boards are going that direction. So I would keep looking at those locations.
Brando, this is Chuck. If I may, piggyback on Christopher's. I know we're running into time, but I think looking at organizations that support military or has military spouse support, such as the USO, ACP, Hiring Our Heroes, whether it's Onward Opportunity with Institute for Veterans and Military Families. There's a number of organizations that are interconnected. The great thing about it is, I think there's many resources, but it's kind of like a no wrong door approach. And a lot of the organizations are interconnected. So I think if you have a specific need, you can reach out to one of these organizations and they'll be able to connect you to what you're looking for. I think that's the beautiful thing about that network and the support organizations is you can hit one, and if you're slightly off target, you'll be centered up because someone's going to get you the right place, because everybody's in it to support the military community, because it's a passion and something that's very near and dear to us.
And also, if you let spouses know that they're welcome to apply, they will come. We convene at the White House once or twice a year with, Second Lady. And that's one of the things we brought all of our corporate partners down with us to discuss this. And all of them said, well, legally, we can't ask them if they're spouses. How do we help them? If you let them know you want them, they will come flooding in. If you say veterans and military spouses wanted, or, please apply, or whatever it is, they'll be more likely to want to apply. There's that kind of, women typically won't put in for something that they feel like they don't meet all of the wickets in an ad, but men will. It's the same military spouse community. They're not going to apply if they don't feel that they're going to be met with, in the way that works for them. So let them know that you want them, and they will show up.
Yeah, as far as Oracle, Oracle is also part of the Second Lady's Military Spouse Business Summit initiative. Very proud of that relationship, and hopefully it continues. The other thing is, I've seen it on the chat that the MSEP, the Military Spouse Employment Partnership, Oracle just had its DoD interview yesterday with them, but they've already asked us about our positions. Can they start posting? So that's one way. Oracle has also donated or sponsored the Hiring Our Heroes military spouse portion, so that they can have fellows participate in other internships at other organizations. So that's another way. As a former recruiter and as a recruiter and hiring manager for my internship program, if you put military spouse and I do a search for military spouse, I will find you, right? But as Lucy had mentioned, is a lot of times military spouses don't disclose that. It's hard to find. And when you're sifting through hundreds of resumes for that one, to fill that one position, it's hard to determine if you're a military spouse or not. But so it's really to your advantage, especially now when the focus, the attention, the momentum is to support military spouses, is if you self-identify and you help HR, you help the recruiter find you, right? And really, I probably passed quite a few resumes simply because I couldn't tell if they were a military spouse, and I had to move on just due to time.
I agree with you there completely. It's like, I think the self-identification is sometimes veterans struggle with that. Even the veterans, even the spouse, they struggle with that.
With veterans, it's a lot easier because you can see the bases. Sometimes you can see the positions. You can sort of connect the dots, right? But the military spouses, sometimes it's kind of hard because they probably will put the major city, not necessarily that base or that installation. And somebody who doesn't know, doesn't know.
Absolutely. So we do have a few more minutes. So what we'll do is just if each one of you can give some closing remarks, and we'll start with you, Chuck. I think you're on mute.
Mute.
I try not to do that, and I just did it. So, no, I just want to thank everyone for joining today. I think everybody is rowing in the same direction. We're all passionate about supporting our military spouses. I think that, you know, the biggest takeaway I would say is everybody has a part. You know, what we try to do at USA, we support various initiatives, and if everybody kind of stays in their craft or their specialty and focuses on that well, and we all contribute and we're unified together, we'll continue to find success and get better at this. So I think collective impact, collaboration is key. So that's all I have to say, and thank you, and it's a privilege and honor to serve with everybody that's joining today.
Fantastic. Go ahead, Chris.
Absolutely. I think that, and I want to follow on with what Chuck said, I think that there's an ecosystem out there of companies, of nonprofits, even governmental organizations that truly want to help solve this problem of military spouse employment. And a lot of work has been put into it, and I think there is an answer out there, but there always is going to be a challenge based upon the nature of military service. And those that unwittingly or sometimes or all the rest marry into that and then have those challenges that go along with it. But I think all of us working together, I think the trends of remote work, I think the trends of identification, I think the trends of electronic and virtual networking can help overcome a lot of this. And I just really appreciate y'all having this panel and giving the opportunity to discuss this issue because it is a significant issue. The numbers are pretty staggering on the challenge that exists for military spouses to find employment. And the more that we bring like-minded individuals to talk about it and to find solutions, I believe the better that we'll do. So thank you very much for having me here today and for everybody who's attending.
Perfect. Lucy?
Absolutely agree with both of you. And I want to thank everybody on this panel. I know that you all are wonderful partners of ACP, and we appreciate all of your support. I would say for me, one of the biggest things, takeaways for me was, here's the social workers coming out in me. Plug into all of these wonderful resources while you have them available to you. Unfortunately, you know, there are a lot of programs that you are only eligible if you are an active duty spouse. And so when my husband was gearing up to EAS from the Marine Corps, I didn't know that. And I didn't plug into enough resources and get enough help before. And I thought, but we're moving back home. I'm from New York City. I spent my entire life there. It's going to be no problem. But I didn't think that being gone for over a decade meant that I had no professional network left here. And I had changed careers. So, you know, use them to your full advantage. We are blessed as a community to have so much support and so many wonderful nonprofits and organizations that want to help. And I also think having this conversation is so important. There is so much stigma. And I think that we're starting to see a shift. We're seeing a shift in you know, hiring processes and what they think military spouses are like. And you also see a shift because we've got that millennial and Gen Z, and they tend to move around more. So that idea of, you know, a military spouse can't be here because they're not going to be here long enough is hopefully kind of making a change. And remote work and all of these wonderful things that I think are going to be really helpful. But without continuing to have these conversations, it'll fall by the wayside. So I really appreciate this panel and everybody here today and being part of the discussion. And please connect with me if you have any questions. I'm happy to help you both in terms of ACP and anything outside of it. You know, you all are my family and my community, and I appreciate you all. And I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, Lucy. Jerry?
Yes, and I do want to add on that, you know, it's been said before, you know, the networking, you know, let your network work for you, right? You can find a lot of pathways on how a military spouse found this opportunity, right? So make those connections. That's number one. Number two is that when on LinkedIn especially, try to find out who the military spouse friendly organizations are and why they have that moniker, right? Just like we have military friendly corporations, military friendly schools, military friendly industries, or veteran friendly industries, do the same thing for military spouses, right? And then do your homework, because that can help narrow the direction where you want to go. And the last thing I offer is, when you're doing your research, a lot of times the advice is find out who the recruiter is, find out who the hiring manager is. My advice to you is find out who the diversity contacts are in an organization. And the reason why is because, unlike the hiring manager or the recruiter, they have their job, but veterans and military spouses falls under diversity programs, and they have a lot more invested in trying to help you because they're trying to help their diverse partners, their diverse demographics. And the beauty about veterans and military spouses, and you can see it on this panel, is the intersectionality of veterans and military spouses, because you have a veteran, but you also have their origin, their race, their ethnicity, their orientation, right? That's coupled, and that really excites diversity professionals, because they can then help promote and get you into the organization. And because it's about hiring, and it's not only about hiring, because when you're hired, we want you to stay. And the reason why that's important is because if you stay, then we can try to promote you to positions of higher responsibility, so that way you become an example as well as an advocate to help other military spouses, other veterans, other demographics succeed in the organization.
Well said, Jerry. Well said. I want to thank the panelists. I want to thank VETS Index for allowing me the opportunity to moderate. And thank you all of the attendees of the conference. You know, maybe next year, hopefully we're all in person. But it is great to see, you know, 137 people are actually on participating. So we are in a way, like Lucy said, a family. This is a kind of fellowship of veterans, those that support veterans, and seek out those mentors and those relationships in those organizations, because there's a lot of people that are willing to help. And with that, I want to hand it over to VETS Index.
Brando, thank you. Great panel, everyone. I appreciate it. Lucy, Chuck, Chris, Jerry. I've spoken and talked to all of you before in the past. I know you, some of you know some of you better than others, and look to continue to build the relationships. So great panel, everyone. Thank you so much.